and welcome to this edition of Explore Xenia TV and this special edition today of Express Xenia TV. I'm your host, Lee Warren. This is a program about news, views, and information in and around Xenia. Today we're joined by Xenia Fire Division Chief Ken Rigsby. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing great today.
Good to see you. Chief, you know, we want to talk to you today about some of the great things that are going on with the Xenia Fire Division. And of course, we want to talk with you because you know all about the things that are happening. Why don't we start with exactly how many people are staffed in the Xenia Fire Division and some of the things that are going on there?
Well, currently we have 45 people in Xenia Fire Division. There's 14 personnel on each shift. And we have 3 shifts total. So that's our line firefighters. The chief, deputy chief, and fire inspector are also included in that. Currently, we have everybody that are up until our recent hire that are paramedics. Everybody's required to be a paramedic and a firefighter. So we're kind of a dual role department. So we do both. They're not just a firefighter. They just don't do EMS. They do both. So the whole idea behind that, it saves money, because if you did those jobs separately, then it would cost more to do that. So we do dual role with our department.
So it's really cross-trained on the various roles of what an EMS person would do, and then obviously what a firefighter would do.
That's correct.
Okay.
And within all that, there's different levels of training that they go through also.
Okay. Now, how many stations do you have, and what about equipment? Can you sort of walk through the equipment that you have, as well as the number of stations that really help serve the city of Xenia?
Yeah, currently we have 2 stations, one on the east side, right next to the post office, and then we have one on the west side on West 2nd Street. That station is slated to be updated hopefully within the next year, so we may be looking at a new station over the next year. Everything's in the works to look at that and the needs assessment for that currently. With our fire equipment, we run 2 frontline engines and 2 frontline medics as our initial responses. We do cross-staff a couple medics with the engines also, if needed, when we're really busy. The majority of our job today is, even though we're called the Fire Division, the majority of our job is EMS. So about 85 to 90% of our call volume today is EMS, and it's more related to that side than it is the fire. So that's taken us where we've had to transition over the years to more of the EMS side than the fire side, even though we train for both.
Okay. Now, since you are trained for both, when you do get these calls, what typically happens when you get a call? I mean, can you walk us through what would happen in the case of a fire call? I mean, how do you deploy your staff? Because I don't think a lot of people really know how busy you truly are.
Well, and part of the problem with that is people don't understand how we respond, why a fire engine comes to an EMS call, why we have 4 fire engines coming to their house when all they had was say the stove was smoking. So they always ask those questions. So in our system, we've built a computer-aided dispatch, which is done through our dispatch center, Green Central Communications. It's a computer-aided dispatch that the dispatcher takes the call on 911.
Yes.
And, you know, we always want people to call 911. We still have some people that will call the old 7-digit number, but you need to call 911. And, you know, you're going to get that quicker response. So once the dispatcher takes that call, there's several questions they're going to ask. And when they ask these questions, people sometimes get upset because, why are you asking me these questions and not sending the equipment? Well, the dispatcher, why they're asking these questions, they are sending that equipment. That's part of the protocol for them to get the proper equipment to the scene. So in the case of a structure fire, we're going to have, you know, if somebody calls and says my house is on fire, that dispatcher is immediately putting that information into the system and dispatching that call. But they will continue to ask questions. Number 1 questions, are you out of your house? Because we know that people need to be out of your house. Don't be calling from the inside your house if your house is on fire. That call is, depending on the type of structure, the computer-aided dispatch system chooses the equipment that it sends. Now, it does not only send our equipment, we also get mutual aid equipment through that. It's an automatic mutual aid system that we have here in Greene County. So it may have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 different jurisdictions that may help us and respond on those calls.
So it's notifying them simultaneously?
That's correct.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
correct. Xenia Greene Communications, Central Communications dispatches for about 11 fire departments.
Okay. And these fire departments are the township fire departments. You would think Sugar Creek, Xenia Township. What other areas are
Well,
covered?
our primary, we use Xenia Township as our first backup.
Okay.
And then we have Cedarville, New Jasper, Spring Valley, Sugar Creek, Bellbrook, Jefferson Township, Silver Creek Township.
Really? Okay.
Are all in our system. The only ones in the county that are not in our system is Fairborn and Beaver Creek. They have their own dispatch centers.
Okay. And again, so when the call goes into 911, really it's that operator's job to assess what's going on in order to send the proper response in the case of a structure fire, or let's talk about an EMS run. I mean, what normally happens there?
The same thing happens with EMS. Once you call 911, all of our dispatchers are EMD dispatchers, which emergency medical dispatch trained.
Okay.
So there's a protocol that they follow for that. And there's a lot of questions they ask when it gets to that. Here again, we have people that do the same thing. They get upset because why are you asking these questions instead of getting somebody here to help me? Again, it depends on the type of the call. It could be a very minor call that they can ask these questions, and they can ask more questions prior to dispatching, or it can be a very serious call like a cardiac arrest, that call is going out immediately, but they are still going to ask these questions to make sure that they're getting the information to us. And so they all work hand in hand with the emergency medical dispatch, which is a positive thing for us.
Okay. And now this is one of the things too, I know that sometimes there's 911 abuse, and that might be known or it might be unknown, but I mean sometimes people call 911 for the wrong reasons. We really want to make sure that people call 911 for the right reasons, right? So how do you go about notifying the public about the real purpose of 911 in serious calls?
Well, over the past 5 years, we've seen a huge increase in our call volume. Majority of that's EMS. So we've seen about a 5% increase per year. This year we'll do well over 6,000 calls, and you know that's a record-breaking year for us. We don't want a record-breaking year when it comes to call volume. That becomes negative. But some of the issues we're seeing, that we're getting these 911 calls that could possibly be handled by somebody going to the doctor, or something very minor that can be handled in a different way. So we want to make sure when you call 911, you're calling for an emergency. We've had many calls that what we would consider a non-emergency call that we still get through 911. So we want you to call us. We don't want you to hesitate and not call us if you feel you have an emergency, but sometimes those calls come in and they're not emergency calls, and they could have been handled another way. Like I didn't have a car to take my son to the hospital because he possibly had a hangnail. I mean, those are some of the types of calls we get sometimes. So we want you to really be considerate. We understand that it's our tax dollars that fund this program.
But there's also a financial impact upon the person that gets transported by, let's say, the City of Xenia EMS, right? I mean,
that's correct.
So the onus is really going to be partially on the person that calls as well.
That is correct.
So let's walk through some of that, because I know that some of the costs gets covered, but a lot of the costs is getting ready to change. I mean, we were in a soft billing situation. Now it's going to go to more of a hard billing soon. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, with the program we've had over the past 10 years with our EMS billing, we had a soft billing program. The soft billing program was, we had the transport, you go to the hospital, there's a bill generated, there's a cost associated with the types of calls, and there's about 4 different levels of costs. So those costs are associated with those calls. it goes to your insurance company, and whatever the insurance paid is what the city accepted. That was the soft billing program. The city of Xenia has opted to go to a modified hard billing program based on the adjusted rate for your insurance. So basically what that means is we still do the same thing. We're going to get that bill. Your insurance company is going to be billed just like it was before, but if you have a copay, that copay will be collected also by the city of Xenia. It's basically like going to your doctor's office. When you go to your doctor and the doctor's visit was $150, but your insurance says, oh, you only owe $100, but $20 of that doctor's visit is your copay. EMS billing is going to be the same thing. That you'll have a copay, or whatever your copay may be, that's what you'll pay.
Okay. Okay. Now, you know, when you're thinking about firefighters and they're cross-trained, I mean, there's a lot that really goes into making sure that these first responders are properly trained. I know that you spend a lot of time fully training your staff, your firefighters, but it's really not the easiest job in the world, is it?
No, it's pretty intense, and with state standards today, they've increased some of our training that we have to do. Mm-hmm. We're required to do so many hours of training over a 3-year period in fire, EMS, and inspections. So we try to take pride in our training and make sure our guys are trained to the top notch, to the highest level that they can be. So we constantly are doing training. And you may see at the fire station occasionally smoke coming from around the building. So we have a fire training simulator.
The fire department's on fire.
That's right. But we have a training simulator that sits in our parking lot that was purchased through a grant about 10 years ago. And we use that on a regular basis for our in-depth training. And the same with EMS. You know, you have so many hours you have to do. We want our employees to be top-notch, proficient in their job, and we try to make sure we have the latest and greatest equipment for our personnel. We want the best for our citizens, but we have to train for that.
One of the things, too, that individuals need to know, the citizens, I should say, of the city of Xenia, is that while we are city-funded, you do a lot of work, and the deputies, captains, when you're filing for grants, which really help supplement the budget to provide extended service to our residents. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Right now, we currently are under a SAFER grant, and SAFER is a staffing grant, and we have 3 personnel under that SAFER grant. We're in our last year of that. And the goal is to maintain our staffing after this grant expires. Just through our numbers, we're showing we need that staffing, if not even more. So we've utilized that grant. The fire training trailer, that was a $350,000 grant that we got about 10 years ago. We've had several grants throughout the years to help purchase equipment. A big one was a workers' comp grant that we did with our cots and our cot lifts, which saves our firefighters' backs and not having to lift patients in and out of the vehicles. That's a huge back injury problem. That was all purchased through grants. So we will utilize grants anytime we can to purchase things and save money for the city.
And if you really think about that, the one that you just mentioned about, you know, the firefighters hurting their backs, when you have a lift that was gotten through a grant that can actually lift a person into one of the ambulances, if a firefighter were to get injured and hurt their back, I mean, that could be a liability issue down the line. It could cost the city more, it could cost citizens more. So these grants are really critically important for you to run your department.
That's correct. That's correct. We are constantly looking at the grants that are out there and however we can use them.
Okay. Well, Chief, I'll tell you what, why don't we just take a break for a minute here? I want to come back, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the new firefighters that have been hired, and also we're going to talk about some of the special programs that the Xenia Fire Division is having at this moment. Stay right there.
Hi, I'm Captain Jeff Broadman with Xenia Fire Division, and you're watching Explore Xenia TV.
Welcome back to Express Xenia. Now, before the break, we talked about some special programs with the Xenia Fire Division, and we've talked about things like there's a drone program now, there's a rescue team, there's tactical medics. Chief, I'd like you to talk about some of those new programs that the Xenia Fire Division now has.
Well, in 2019, we have developed some tactical medics in conjunction with Greene County Sheriff's Department, Xenia Police Division. We now have 4 medics that are tactical medics. They've gone through some extensive training to get up to that level. And the reason for these tactical medics is protection of our staff, the Sheriff's Department staff, and even the person that they're going after if they get injured. A lot of times what happens, we have to think about protection for our personnel in today's world. We've seen an increase in our SWAT call-outs over the past year, and we want to make sure our police officers and sheriff's officers are all protected. So that's the reason why we've developed this program. It's been talked about for a couple of years with the different departments, and it did come to fruition this year, and which I think is a great addition. It is some extensive training that they do on a regular basis. They have monthly training with SWAT. And so they're highly involved in this program.
So they're specially trained to make sure that if anybody gets injured, whether it be a police officer, another firefighter, if you will, that they're there on site and they can take care of those situations when you've got events like that.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there will also be a medic, you know, from whatever jurisdiction that they're in, that'll be on the scene to handle those patients once the tactical medics get them out of the hot or warm zone.
Okay, very good. Now, another program that we talked about off camera, I want you to talk about it now, is with drones and how important they have become to rescue situations and to the overall operations of the fire division. Tell us about your drone program.
I see the drone program just at the beginning stages in the fire and police divisions just because of the technology that's there in today's world, and that changes every day. And so we're seeing more and more of this used in rescues. There will be personnel dispatched on SWAT call-outs that'll be utilized during SWAT call-outs. A good example of a rescue, a few months ago we had a call up in Miami Township where they called for our drone teams. So Xenia Fire Division, Xenia Police Division sent their personnel up, and they were doing a search for an elderly lady that had wandered off. And so they were doing this search. And they went a long time looking for this lady, had people on horsebacks, they had people on ATVs, they were going around and just searching everywhere for this lady. But the drone picked up a signal on something that was abnormal right after somebody on horseback had ridden right by her. And she was down in a ravine. But the drone was able to see her and was able to find her. And we were getting toward the evening hours, so it was going to be getting dark. And so they were able to find the lady, and she was basically unharmed. She had fallen, gotten down in a ravine, and couldn't get out. We have different cameras for our drones. We have what we call a FLIR camera for nighttime vision, and we have daytime cameras. So we've the program's growing. We have a lot of personnel in the fire division that are involved. Police division is growing in the personnel that they have. It's a joint effort for the city of Xenia. The drones can also be used for economic development. You know, we can fly areas if we have somebody that's interested in a parcel of land or a building and they want to see a full overview of that. We can fly these drones and utilize those for those programs also. Special events. We can show our public, you know, if you're not able to attend a special event, we can fly those special events also. And there's stipulations and there's things that we have to be careful. You know, the FAA rules do apply. And so how we fly and where we fly, we have to be very cognizant of that when we're doing it.
So there's multiple purposes with drones. There's multiple things that can be done. It makes a lot of sense to have drones in a fire division like Xenia.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're going to see that grow more and more. I was at a conference recently, and out in California, there was a department that anytime there's a structure fire, there's a drone automatically launched and goes to that address, and they send a picture back to the vehicles of the people responding, and they have a 360 view of that building prior to them, anybody arriving on the scene. I see that technology growing. There's some departments that, police vehicles that when they go emergency, the drone launches off their vehicle and flies along with them.
Gosh, right?
So there's
Wow.
a lot of things out there that this technology is changing on a regular basis. And it can be costly, and it can be very, you know, just depending on what you want to get into with it. But I see it growing in the future.
Very functional, gotcha. Now, another thing that we discussed were rescue teams. Tell us what's going on with your rescue team.
Now, over the past couple years, you know, the fire department does multiple venues per se. So one of the things we do is we've started developing and building up our rescue team. And people think, well, a rescue team, isn't that what you do on a daily basis? We're talking about the disciplines that are above and beyond what we do in normal firefighting. So we're talking about trench rescues, high angle rescues using ropes. You know, if somebody's up on a 150-foot tower, that these guys go up, they rig up equipment to bring that person down that's injured up on that tower. Confined space training. So there's a lot of different avenues that we look at. So we've really been developing our team in conjunction. In the area, there's a Region 3 strike team that all these personnel are on that strike team also. But we've been developing our own here and doing monthly training with that to increase what we can do in the city.
Okay. Well, with that comes another question, Chief. I mean, I sort of look at you as being like the orchestrator of your team, being able to find out, even though everybody is cross-trained, there might be some folks with more excelling skill sets in certain areas than others. Do you sort of deploy your team like that? I mean, do you sort of say, okay, well, here's a situation where we've got this going on. Let's say it's a high angle type of thing. Do you say, well, the best person on our team is this person, maybe they'll go in and be the first person up? I mean, are you sort of looking at this like a coach in a way, from an athletic type of a comparison?
Not really,
Okay.
because they're all trained to the same level. And this program's a voluntary program. So,
Okay.
I mean, we're not saying you know, these 6 guys have to be in this program.
Okay.
You know, when you get into the specialties of the rescue teams, you know, Swiftwater, for example, we sent the majority of our guys through Swiftwater rescue training. Now in Xenia, do we have Swiftwater? No, but we do in the county. And so we utilize this team countywide. It's not just for us. You know, we do answer the calls for mutual aid on a regular basis, and so we utilize those teams. But it's a team that's developed on a voluntary basis. You know,
Okay.
once they get on the team, we want them to stay on the team because we put some extensive training into them. But it's a voluntary basis because you got to be the right person for that job.
Right. So there might be some personal interest as far as a firefighter is concerned, and if they go into this in a voluntary situation, they're trained and they're going to be good no matter what.
That's
they're
correct.
all trained. That's what
correct.
you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Now, what about public events? I know I see a lot of the firefighters out at public events, neighborhood night out. You see them at the trunk or treat, school events, that type of thing. You do have a pretty healthy and robust public outreach type of impact with your fire division, right?
Yes, and personally, I want our guys out in the public.
Right.
And in today's world, everything's negative. We want the positive out there. Typically, when we're seeing people in the houses, and you know, if we have 6,000 calls a year, we're seeing about 6,000 families automatically. Those aren't on that positive note. We want our personnel out in the public on that positive note. And we want people to know who we are. And so we do. We attend all the special events. We're involved in, and some of the special events when we get into the bigger events like the Air Force, or the marathon that we do that's held here every year. It's a qualifier for the Boston Marathon. Different events like that. We want we're involved in that as far as scheduling and training and staffing. But we also want our people to be out there and be seen in public and talk to the public. I think it's real important. We do a lot of prevention. We have a lot of visitors, especially during Fire Prevention Week. We have a lot of visitors, a lot of schools that either come visit us or we go visit them. We want that information getting out there. And we used to do a program pretty regular for all of the elementary schools, and I would love to see it come back, where we did a skit every year, and it was geared toward fire prevention. It was always a hit, and so hopefully we can bring that back too.
Gotcha. Well, you know, Chief, it should be obvious, but from your perspective, why is it so important for the community to support Xenia Fire Division when we place, let's say, for instance, a levy on the ballot?
Well, like I said before, funding for Xenia Fire Divisions through your property taxes. We do have a levy that's on the ballot that is renewed every 5 years based on a 1950 assessment. Cost keeps going up. The cost of business keeps going up. The number of calls keep increasing. So there is a cost factor to that. It's something that we really can't control as far as cost. I mean, inflation is inflation. It's going to happen. So as those costs go up, it does become more costly for the city to maintain this level of service. I feel that to have that top level of service, top-notch service, you know, it takes funding. And we do the best we can with the funding that we have to try to maintain what we can do. I personally don't feel we're at the level of number of firefighters that we have currently. I think it needs to increase, but it's a budget constraint. And I think as we grow as a city, as we develop as a city, I think we can see this become more and more of an issue because those numbers need to increase, but we need to see that increase in our tax base and maybe a levy. But, you know, that's nothing that's in the future that I know of.
Very good. Well, Chief, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate your public service, your long public service here for the Xenia Fire Division. You do a very important job for our citizens, and we appreciate everything that you and your firefighters do on a daily basis. Now, if you really want more information about the Xenia Fire Division, they also have a Facebook page, so you can check that out. And let me say this, when you're out there with your family and kids, wave at all the firefighters. They love that. Maybe they'll blow and toot the horn on one of the fire engines for you specially. I think we can make that happen, right, Chief?
Oh, probably so.
There we go. All right, well, that just about does it for Express Xenia today. We appreciate you tuning in today with us. If you want to find out more about the city of Xenia, we invite you to do one simple thing, to check out explorexenia.com. Just log right on to find out anything about the city of Xenia. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take care.